Death is a natural and unavoidable part of life. The human experience requires us to discover and accept it. Life is precious, but it has to end at some point. Have you come to accept it? What, or should I say who, will you be leaving behind when the time comes? How many living things have you had to say goodbye to so far during your life? During this limited time we have, I think that we should do what makes us the happiest and treat others right. Welcome to Games for Healing, a web series involving games that seek to get you feeling, thinking, and sometimes just relaxing. Death can be a harsh topic. It's always interesting when a piece of media tackles it, because it's viewed differently around the world by so many different people. There are endless beliefs and philosophies about death. Hey, I know. Let's take the topic and make a cozy farming simulator about it. That's what Spiritfarer is, a game that takes a difficult subject and coats it with pleasant visuals and moods, while the underlying reality and sadness of it all lays underneath, ever present and growing. Spiritfarer takes management simulation and combines it with 2D side-scrolling and platforming. I find that most simulation games tend to go for a top-down perspective, so seeing a 2D one felt pretty unique. Developed and published by Thunder Lotus Games, it released in 2020 and received free updates until its completion in 2021. The platforms to play it on are PC, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and Stadia. You'll immediately notice that the visuals go for that delightful hand-drawn look. Animations are smooth and detailed, an art style that I'd love to see be done more often. The effort never goes unnoticed. Spiritfarer starts off introducing us to our main character, a young lady named Stella, along with her cat Daffodil. They wake up on a boat and meet Charon, based on the figure of the same name from Greek mythology. He's the Spiritfarer, or at least it's his last day with the title. He passes the title on to Stella, along with the Everlight. The Everlight is a mysterious glowing object that can turn into any tool Stella needs. It's super cool. Charon then goes through the Everdoor, the gateway that leads either to the afterlife or to nothingness. The game never shows us what happens to a spirit after they go through it. The Spiritfarer's duty is to sail the sea in search of spirits. Then they must care for and grant the wishes of these departed souls until it's time for them to move on through the Everdoor. The spirits take the form of animals based on the personalities of the deceased, with the outlier being Stanley. That kid's a mushroom. Each passenger also has their own flower that's associated with them, except for Stanley. His spirit flower is a mushroom. Spirits start off as cloaked beings who mostly all look the same outside of size and color. Once they're ready, they'll show you their true form. If your soul were to take on such a sight, what animal would you be? And what flower would you wear? I think it's fun to wonder. The game has 15 spirits that will board your boat throughout the journey. Technically 16 since Bruce and Mickey are a 2-for-1 deal. Each of them have their own specialties and things to teach. For example, Gwen will teach you how to use the loom, while Summer will teach you about caring for crops. Over the course of the game, you'll get to know these characters piece by piece, their overall personalities, what things were like for them when they were alive, their favorite foods and furnishings, and more. There are many pieces of information and details that go into figuring out what their lives were like and how they possibly died. Some of these characters are incredibly likable the whole way through. A few are kind of jerks, but they're jerks who might grow on you over time. One thing they all have in common is that they all seem to have some sort of connection to Stella. They were all a part of her life somehow. Each spirit has their own quest line where you'll be doing all sorts of things for them. Taking them places, feeding them their favorite foods, building them homes with their requested furniture, and giving them things. You can check on their mood and hunger level, and raise them by feeding them or by hugging them. Yes, this game has a dedicated hug option. Eventually the time will come where you'll bring your friends to the Everdoor. As the Spiritfarer, it's your job to see them off to whatever happens after death. These goodbyes are very sad. Most spirits have something to share with us about life and death. They'll share their philosophies, the lessons of life they've learned, their regrets, the things they don't regret. Then it's time to hug them and see them disappear. They may be gone from your boat, but the sky will be filled with a new constellation that looks like them, constantly reminding you of the friends you've met and said goodbye to throughout the game whenever the night sky is visible. They're always with you. Only one of these goodbyes got me teary-eyed. There's this elderly hedgehog lady named Alice who has dementia. She gets to a point where she has trouble walking from place to place and no longer remembers who you are. Seeing her go through that and then seeing her go was definitely the part of the game that resonated with me the most. I think everyone who plays this game will have their own favorite spirits and ones that emotionally hit them the hardest. At the beginning, Stella receives a ship from a shark man who loves to tell jokes. This ship will grow and be upgraded as you progress through the game. It's satisfying seeing it go from this to something like this. The ship will eventually feel like a moving village. You'll have homes for the spirits along with facilities for harvesting materials like fields and orchards. You can place the buildings however you like, so long as you have the space and place them so they fit. The gameplay mainly consists of sailing from island to island in search of spirits while managing resources along the way. The sea is filled with events and NPCs as well. The world map is kind of deceptively large. You can only explore so much of it at a time. Parts of the map are blocked off by obstacles which you'll need to upgrade your ship to get through. Major upgrades require spirit flowers, which you get after sending spirits through the Everdoor. The borders of the map are totally inaccessible. These black areas will stop you and show a warning sign with fire. Perhaps the sea is a peaceful purgatory that's surrounded by the flames of an underworld? If you're somebody who easily grows impatient or bored, this game isn't for you. There are times where Spiritfarer moves like molasses. It didn't start to pick up for me until around 2 hours in, when I started getting more facilities and spirits. Most of these 2 hours were spent slowly crossing the sea while fishing. Meanwhile, my first and only spirit was starving but refused to eat the only food I had because most of the spirits are picky eaters. Pro tip: listen to Gwen and salvage the junk on the ship that you start with. You can't start building things until you do. My logic was, why would I demolish it? It's all I have. But the quest you're given tells you to demolish it. So the sooner you do that, the sooner you can build things and have more things to do. The game is all about time management. While sailing from place to place, how much stuff can you do? How many spirits can you talk to? How many materials can you gather? Many activities run on timers. Lots of actions take up chunks of time. You can sit back and relax and take it at your own pace, or you can be like me and try to be as efficient as possible. I was always doing something. The gameplay is slow, repetitive, and grindy, but in an addicting and relaxed sort of fashion that you'd expect from the genre. Things become less repetitive as you unlock more things to do and see. There's something incredibly satisfying about learning the unique layout of your own ship and the almost rhythmic feeling of zipping from place to place to do what needs to be done. It's not for everybody, but anybody can play. There's barely any skill involved in Spiritfarer. It's mostly just a matter of time and doing the right things in the right places. The game has constant backtracking, but thankfully there's a fast travel system as well as boat upgrades that increase movement speed. It's totally a game that you can just zone out with after a long day of work or school, or maybe something to play a bit before bed. I found that the game was very slow paced at the beginning without much going on. I was at my busiest in the middle of the game when there were plenty of spirits on my boat. Once I only had a few spirits left, that's when things started to slow down again. Things get lonely in the late game, especially since the homes that you built for your friends still remain after they're gone. They feel like memorials. If you ever have nothing to do while your boat is moving during the early and late game, you could always just look at your phone or something like I did. The majority of the time you'll be busy and content though. Nearly 100%ing the game took me about 35 hours, so there's definitely plenty to do and see. Spiritfarer is a constant visual delight. There's a decent variety of islands to visit with different visual themes. The music is lovingly orchestrated. What it gets especially right is the personality, not only through the tons of dialogue but also through the animation. You can easily tell what a character's personality is like just by looking at their animations alone. Getting to know each spirit is fun and tragic at the same time. They all have unique personalities that stand out. Oftentimes I imagine how cool it would be if this was a fully fledged platformer game. There are plenty of platforming elements in this game. Stella's moveset will expand as you unlock more moves, and there will be plenty of jumping and exploring along the way. At first, I found the world building to be a bit confusing. Who are all these random spirits who are living their own lives on the islands with jobs and homes and everything? Do they just live normal lives forever until the Spiritfarer picks them up? Why do all the spirits we meet know Stella? Is the sea some sort of purgatory? Why is Stella here, and why did she become the Spiritfarer? Who is this giant owl that confronts us every so often? Who are the shopkeepers and other important NPCs? I had plenty of questions. If you enjoy slow, cozy games, I'd say give Spiritfarer a try. Just be patient with it, that's all. If you're going into it to experience its themes of death, just keep in mind that you have to go through a lot of repetitive gameplay to get to those deep and emotional moments. Its characters have plenty to teach us about death and looking back on life. This game features local multiplayer, so I think if you have someone to play with, it could be plenty of fun. The other player controls Daffodil. While playing the game by yourself, Daffodil will be an NPC who will follow you everywhere. Sometimes she gets stuck and can't keep up with you, but then this happens. I love that. I played the game on Nintendo Switch and I noticed some frame rate and stuttering issues as my boat kept getting bigger. I assume the game runs much better on more powerful hardware. Playing the game in handheld mode will be a blessing though. It's perfectly suited for that kind of play. If you have a Steam Deck, you could enjoy it that way too. During my playthrough, I encountered several glitches and one game crash. Most of the glitches stemmed from the smithy. One time I used it, but I didn't get any materials from it. Then Stella's animation started bugging out and freezing on jump frames when she landed. Then I tried harvesting crops and nothing would happen despite Stella using her scythe. One time, in the late game, I hugged a spirit and then the game totally froze. These issues were easily fixed by closing and reopening the software, but it'd be nice to see these bugs squashed. From here on out in this video, I'll be majorly spoiling the plot of the game. If you have any interest in playing it, you should come back later. If not, stick around. You know how your job has been to see a bunch of spirits off to the afterlife? It turns out that there was only a single spirit in the whole game who you've been working towards bringing there. Stella. Stella actually lived a life as a palliative care nurse before she became terminally ill. Her being the Spiritfarer is kind of like a parallel to her caring for terminally ill patients in the real world. Just as she saw them breathe their last breaths on hospital beds, she sees them during their final moments, before they go through the Everdoor. It's executed well here though. It's foreshadowed throughout the whole game. The reveal doesn't just happen out of nowhere and sour the experience. All of the spirits having connections to Stella was no coincidence. They were all either family members, friends, or hospital patients who passed away during Stella's life. Daffodil was her pet cat who passed away. The only character in the game who she never actually knew was Buck, but she knew of him, and that's why he appears as a spirit. The giant owl who makes a few appearances is actually a representation of Hades from Greek mythology. Whenever you encounter him, we're shown images of Stella's life. These aren't explained, they're just shown. They make sense later. In these images, we see Stella and she looks older. She would have to be an adult for her to have been working as a nurse. She appears as a bright and happy young girl in this purgatory world she's created. Eventually, Stella's sister will board her boat. She's the only character in the game who isn't dead. We can interpret this as Stella's sister speaking to her while she's in a coma. She'll talk about Stella's life and the people in it that appear in the game as spirits. Something to note is that the game's landscapes are based on places Stella has visited. At one point, her sister mentions that Stella has been to Japan. That's why there's one section of the map that has Japanese-inspired islands. At one point, Stella lived out in the big city in Montreal. That's why some islands feature big bustling areas. One island has a hospital which represents where she worked. The game's world is formed by Stella's experiences and personal connections. If you were the Spiritfarer, what people from your life would board your boat? Once you send all of the base game's spirits through the Everdoor, it'll be time to bring Stella and Daffodil to the Everdoor as our main character is about to die in real life. It's made clear that Stella has accepted her fate and is ready to die, and that her mother and sister are holding her hands in real life. There are spirits who were added to the game later as DLC which aren't required to get the game's ending, but they do offer insight to Stella's life. You'll probably want to finish their quest lines before bringing Stella to the Everdoor. Once Stella has passed on, a constellation of her and Daffodil appears in the sky, now among the constellations of all the spirits you've said goodbye to before. With this, the credits roll and we're treated to an emotional lyrical song that had my eyes go misty. Booting up the game again after the credits will take you back to before Stella went through the Everdoor, so if you want to 100% the game, you still can. You won't be locked out of anything after beating it. You can interpret the game's underlying plot in multiple ways. You could say that everything took place in Stella's mind and that there were no spiritual or supernatural elements at all. You could say that she really was in purgatory and that the world was a real place that her spirit went to while she was dying. Either way, it's a personal journey of reflection, loss, and acceptance for her. You could say that everyone goes through their own Spiritfarer experience upon death. If you wanted to, you could just ignore the game's underlying themes and just enjoy it on the surface level. You could just enjoy being a happy young person in a beautiful world on a boat bringing spirits to the afterlife. Then when she leaves, Buck takes over. Buck is the only character in the game who you don't take through the Everdoor. His constellation is in the sky at the very beginning of the game, and when you meet him, he's already in his animal form. This is because Stella never actually knew him directly, but she knew what he was like and that he died as a teenager who loved Dungeons and Dragons. Spiritfarer is a soothingly beautiful game with flaws. Its name is appropriate because this title is filled with soul from start to finish. It isn't for everyone, but I think that anyone who can stick with its slow pace will get a lot out of it. It's an experience where you can chip away at the resource management while enjoying the touching stories as they come and go. I'd say I'm glad I played it. It's inevitable that you'll have to say goodbye to the spirits and Stella herself in this game. It's the same as the fact that we'll all have to inevitably say goodbye to the people we love in real life one day. Enjoy the ride while it lasts. Make the most of it. Maybe you'll see everyone again one day. Who knows? Until next time, I'll see you later. Stay strong out there.